Alright, time to start making the first cuts on this here new coat. Not gonna lie, I'm a tad nervous about cutting into these blankets as I've only got so many in my wool blanket supply. I had a good year last year finding some at thrift stores, but this year hasn't been so bountiful. This blanket did actually come from an online store that my lovely and talented wife, Queen of Internet Research, found. It is a 100% wool blanket. I can't remember the name of the company where she found it. I'll try to post that at some point. But it was about 40 or 50 bucks, so not, the hundreds of dollars that a Hudson Bay blanket would cost, but, not cheap either. Still more than what I was finding blankets for at thrift stores. So I'm just terrified I'm going to screw something up, but I gotta try to keep reminding myself that I can just sew it back together, sort of. So anyway, yeah, got my new little rotary cutter tool, and guess I'm gonna get to it. All right, initial pieces are coming together here. We got on this side, this is the front, this is the back, or maybe I got that backwards. Can't tell when it's bunched up like this. And this is the shoulder area. I've decided to try to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Nice instead of rough, like some of my previous attempts, now that I know what I'm doing a little bit better. But so what I've done with the seam is where the two faces were together, I cut back one side and I folded it over, and I'm stitching that down to create this nice flat seam here. Should lay a little better, should feel a little bit more comfortable, look a little bit more spiffy. Alright, main body is roughly together. It's kind of a cross between a poncho and a medieval tabard base design. And I got a big collar up there. It is going to be split up the front. It's going to have some closures. But for the time being, I was leaving it together just to make sure I got everything lined up right on some of the other elements. The other thing I'm going to add to it is kind of a funky style of sleeve that, I wanted something that I could wear hiking and camping and while I'm being active, and I tend to overheat, so I thought it would be cool. I like the poncho style because, it's easy to thermoregulate, but I like having sleeves, so I wanted a semi-removable sleeve. So the answer to that is I'm going to do an internal sleeve that is attached at the back and not fully attached in the front. So there'll be like a slit near the shoulder area where I can just slide my arm out and the sleeves can fold up behind me inside the rest of the coat. It's a new design for me. It's got some historical precedent. I did find some images that inspired that. But yeah, it's gonna take a bit of figuring and messing around to get it right. So that's what I'm doing next. Remember how I said I couldn't remember where my wife found this blanket? What online company? Ectos, 100% wool, 66 by 90-inch blanket. So there. All right, so these are going to be the caps to the sleeves, which are also fingerless gloves. I have some little cinches there, and I got it set up so that the cinch is on the outside of my hand instead of somewhere weird like in the middle of my hand where the other seam would be. I just did a zigzag stitch around the thumb hole. Nothing fancy, but should keep it in place. Alright, so what I'm doing now, late at night, is I'm working on some details for some shoulder flaps that are going to go on the sleeves. It's going to kind of look somewhat funky and armor-like, I guess. So yeah, fun stuff. Alright, next up I'm making some cuffs to go on the sleeves. That's just a little embellishment there. There's going to be some trim. They have built-in pockets. The idea being that you can pull your hand into your sleeve and just pop it in a pocket in case you don't have mittens to keep your hand warm. A little bit more complicated than the previous version I made, so we'll see how this goes, I guess. Alright, first of all, yes, it is brighter in here than it has been in previous little shots there, because I installed a nice bright light. Anyway, the other night when I was working late, I came to the realization that I kind of stitched some things in out of order, so I need to pull the stitches off. I am certainly no sewing expert. This is only like my third project, relatively new to the whole sewing thing in general, but I discovered that once I rip some of the stitches right there and I pull it apart a little, I can stick the pointy end, where is it? There it is, of my stitch ripper into these little loops and lift up and just kind of unlace the whole thing without potentially skewering or damaging my fabric. Now, those of you that have sewn before and are more experienced than me probably already knew that, but this is exciting news to me, so thought I'd share. Alright, here comes the nerve-wracking step. I've got the sleeve system, which is fairly complicated, pieced together, I think, roughly symmetrically. It's not an easy shape to measure things out. Got these little shoulder embellishments that are just going to be kind of stitched on here, work as little flaps. This is the cuff system, so there's a pocket in here, and there's actual sleeve in here that's got a built-in fingerless glove. I've got some elastic shock cord that's going to go in there. Already got some in here. There's the mitten. Now we see if I can actually make this work right. Alright, not that this is terribly easy to tell what's going on here, but this is the sleeve component that I was working on. It's both sleeves are part of one big piece. I was noticing as I had it loosely tacked into the rest of the coat, which is kind of a poncho tabard hybrid thing, that the sleeves were a little tight in the armpit area. So after sitting on it for a night, I finally decided that it was these little, I don't know what you call these, gussets maybe. The part that's under the arm in the seam to add a little bit more room. I think it was coming too far in this way. They're a little too long. So I did a test. I just pulled the stitches off this one. Made it feel a lot more comfortable, a lot less tight. So I think I'm going to leave this bit of fabric, just in case I change my mind at some point. But it can just be tucked up and out of the way, or when I have the sides of the coat tied together for warmth, this can kind of hang in there as a bit of a draft block or something. But I need to remove the stitches from the other side to an equal amount, and then I need to retack here just so the rest of the stitches don't continue to pull out. Alright, so my trimming back of those gussety bits in the armpit area worked pretty good. Makes it easier to slip my arms in and out of the sleeves. And I decided that I'm going to add a little bit of trimmy bits to this edge here, obviously. So that if I have the coat open in the front, or I was realizing that given that it's that whole tabard poncho style, I can take the whole front and flip it up over a shoulder, all nice and cavalier style, and makes this part visible, so I thought I should try to make it look a little nicer. So, sleeves are detached for the time being. I think after this I will permanently attach them to the coat, and then move on to maybe the hood. Alright, ignore the mess of my studio in the background here. Here's my progress as of this moment. Sleeves are pretty much done. tuck this little thing in here. So the sleeves are somewhat removable. This here is the whole front component. It's going to be a tabard, like I said, split up the middle. I've got this little bit that's going to go over on top with a hood, closures, pockets and things. Nice big tall collar. It's going to get trimmed out too. But what I was trying to demonstrate or mention before was that I can flop that over the shoulder. I can show off my t-shirt designs. Not that this is one of them, but you know, when I wear my t-shirts, still got the sleeves on with the pockets and mittens and all that good stuff. I can also do like that. So back to poncho. Sleeves are just kind of hanging off like a cape. The other part that's going to be over the front and back will have a little bit of a gap in it, so I can always stuff the sleeves like that in there, keep them out of my way if I needed to. Like I said, completely open on the sides. There's going to be some trim here that's going to make it a little bit wider. A couple of tie closures so that if I really want to stay warm, it'll be able to tie completely shut like a normal jacket. So yeah, I think I'm permanently attaching the sleeves in the back now, and then I'm moving on to the hood. Hood time! Hood. Alright, this is actually the liner to the hood. This band right here has some shock cord in it. Thought being that hopefully I will be able to cinch it down to the top of my head, kind of like a little halo, so that when I turn my head, the hood will kind of move with me, and not, you know, I wear glasses, so one of the things I hate about hoods is that when you turn your head, the hood doesn't move with it, pushes your glasses around, gets in the way, obstructs your peripheral vision anyway. And I'm going to try to run another shock cord kind of like going this angle here, coming out on either side of the opening. And the hope is that if I cinch that down, it'll be kind of like glued to my head for when I'm looking around. But there will be an external cover to the hood that's going to be out of a green wool. So hopefully when I cinch things down, it doesn't bunch up the outside and make it look kind of dumb, because it's only going to be, the liner's only going to be attached to the main hood on the front edge, along with some fancy trim bits. So we'll see how it goes. Kind of works. Got to do the one that runs this way next. Seems to be pretty good so far. So before I completely cover up some of this stuff with the next cord channel and eventually the outside layer, I wanted to highlight a little detail-y bit that I put in there. So this is like a 2-inch wide strip of fabric that acts as the channel, so it gives enough room when the cord is pulled tight for the fabric to bunch a little. Although I don't know how effective that is or if that even makes sense. But I didn't want the cord, you know, migrating across those 2 inches around my head when it was supposed to be holding in place, so I added a couple of little stitched in boxes periodically. Some extra stitching there just to keep the cord in the channel where I wanted it to, but still allow freedom of movement of the fabric elsewhere. So anyway, back to pinning the next piece in place. There we have it. Hood interior done. Got the 2 cinches down front and the 1 cinch in the back. And at some point I will probably shorten these shock cords because they're all a bit too long. But there we have it. Hood. Alright, outer hood is done. It's got a little pockety bit for the toggle whatchamits to pass through. Next step is to attach the liner to the exterior and then attach the entire hood to the mantle, yoke, whatever you want to call it, bit. Hood. Alright, so the hood is pinned together. I've got the cinches pulled tight on the liner, and I can turn my head, and the hood kind of follows. Hood doesn't drape as nicely as I would have hoped, but it does appear that my theory was correct, that cinching down the cinches, because what else would you do with a cinch, doesn't seem to deform the overall shape of the hood on the outside and make it look all weird. Well, any weirder than it already looks. So that's cool. So now I'm going to stitch all around here to permanently attach it, and I've got to attach it to the mantle-y, yokey bit thing that goes here. Then I got to do some trim, make some little spiky, pointy, fancy bits. I guess that's what I'm doing next. Alright, so for all my other scout nerds out there, I wanted a way to finish off the shock cord here so it wouldn't slide through the toggle, but I wanted a loop so that it would be easier to grab with one finger if I got gloves on or something. But obviously shock cord is kind of slippery and stretchy, so it doesn't really hold loops very well, unless you know some knots. I tied myself a little bowline here, which is a non-sliding loop knot. So there. Upon further reflection, I think it's probably a wise idea to stitch the hood along the bottom edge as well. The green that's overhanging. I'll put the stitch line up here so I got some room to play with, but the green is what's actually going to connect to the neck area. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Alright, went ahead and attached the hood to the mantelpiece. I took a break from it last night because it was late. I had only had about 4 hours of sleep and I felt like I was overlooking something or forgetting something, but I think I knew what I was doing all along. So I went ahead and attached that. I've got the trim for the this mantelpiece here all tacked on the wrong side, and it's going to fold over to the front. And I've got some pointy embellishment bits that are going to get attached to. Not really sure how this is going to go. Might be a little tricky, but only one way to find out. Alright, I got the trim on the mantelpiece pinned in place here. It's attached on the back, pinned to the front and rolled over. Kind of looks a little bulky and poofy right now, but I think once I actually get some stitches in it, and I'm going to run another stitch near the edge, or maybe 2, kind of like the way a karate belt is put together, that'll flatten things out, give it a little bit of shape and form. See how it goes. Hopefully it works, because I really don't want to undo all these stitches. Alright, hood and mantle are mostly done. Got the some little detail bits on the shoulders there, there's some in the back. Gonna add a closure here. Gonna add a little diamond shape here, I think, and I got some other pieces cut out. These bits and things here that will possibly go on the side of the hood somewhere in this area. I don't know, I'm going to pin them on, see how it looks. Maybe I won't use them, but coming along. Alright, here's kind of a test of what the final coat's going to do, or look like rather. I have a closure right here. It's going to be trim. This is all open now. This is going to get attached to here so that it opens as one unit. Trim around the sides, a couple of ties so that it can close tight. There's going to be a built-in belt with a little hidden pocket back here that you can pull the belt out of. Chest pockets, hip pockets, probably a couple other odds and ends that I'm forgetting about, but shaping up. Pretty happy with it. I don't think I will ever be cold again. Not that I usually get that cold, but still. Alright, currently 24 degrees and dropping outside. Just got some snow yesterday. Not enough though. Going on a short hike with the family. Gonna field test the coat for where it's at right now. The main body is still missing all its little extra bits, the closures, the trim that will help close it up on the sides. But wanted to field test anyway. See how it goes, because this is kind of what it's designed for. Being outside in the cold, moving around. If I get too warm, I can open up and cool myself off. Loving the way the hood turned out. Really sits on my head, keeping my head warm. The built-in fingerless gloves are pretty nice. It's cold enough that I'm probably going to unroll the sleeves, keep my my fingers a little warm. But yeah, should be a fun walk. Alright, so far so good. It is definitely cold out. Yeah, I'm wearing shorts. I do that year round. That's nothing out of the ordinary. I've actually got 2 pairs of shorts on. A t-shirt and just a regular cotton long sleeve shirt. Nothing super warm. So far, coat is functioning well. I think it will benefit from having the trim on the sides and the front, just to help with blocking out the cold when it gets like this. But it's nice that as I am moving around and starting to warm up, I can vent through the sides here. So overall, pretty happy with the design. Looking forward to finishing this off completely and wearing it all the time and moving on to my next project, which will likely be a new everyday carry bag. Endless. My kids that have been oohing and aahing at this coat really want one, and I make them one. So anyway, onward. Alright, we're back from our short little walk there. A little over a mile, less than 2. I don't know exactly how far it was. Just going through the woods. It is pretty cold out. I can feel that on my exposed skin. Pulled my hands in. They've been staying pretty warm. Hand that's holding the camera right now is getting pretty cold. So that's a testament to these sleeves working pretty nicely. I did point out before, I just got 2 pairs of shorts on, regular cotton t-shirt, one of my own actually, and a long sleeve cotton t-shirt. Nothing thermal, nothing smart wool. Coat did pretty good as I was moving along. I didn't get too hot, didn't get or stay cold. Looking forward to finishing it. Like I said, the sides being open to vent. Little too short right now to close up if I was getting cold, but I'll take care of that when I add a couple inches of trim on the front and back, a couple of ties to close everything. I just got my simple leather ring belt holding everything together now, because the only closure is this one up here on the hood. Yeah, pretty happy with it. Can't wait to finish it and give it a real test. I am going to, I think, for colder weather, or if I'm just standing around, this is 100% wool, this blue blanket, and it's pretty dense. You know, if I hold it up to the light, can't really see through it, so it's a good blanket. But a single layer is probably a little thin for when it's really getting cold. So when I add the chest pockets and the lower waist pockets, I'll probably just continue the fabric across the entire panel and effectively get a second layer of wool out of it. So yeah, gotta get back to work and finish this thing. Just spent over an hour and a half cutting and pinning trim on the entire Tabbard main body portion of the coat. Time to start sewing it together. Well, that's not good. Alright, made a special trip out this morning. Got me a new foot. Time to get back to work and get this thing done. Alright, front side toggles and ties are pinned in place. I tried to pin the back ones in place, but I didn't get them to line up quite right with the front ones, just because of the way it lays on my shoulders and back. It made it really hard to measure and figure out exactly where they should line up. It wasn't the same as the front. So I'm going to have to do that, probably with some assistance. But first I want to get these attached so they don't move around on me. I am thinking of attaching these ties basically where the pins are. Do a little box stitch here, another one right here, and leaving this open so that if I don't have the sides closed, I can slide the excess through and just tie it around itself and not have it dangling and getting in the way and getting caught on stuff and being annoying. So we'll see how that works. Alright, so where I'm at right now is I just attached a tie out on the inside of the collar piece. And I'm about to stitch in a little loop so that this will fold over itself, and I can wrap it around, feed it through there, and tie it tight so it's around my my whole mouth nose area. Did all the ties on the front and back. Tied some of them together. Seems to work pretty good. So that's good news. Like I said, I left a little bit of a gap here between my stitching on each tie so that I could feed the excess through to keep it kind of out of the way. And then I've got an upper tie that probably won't use unless it's really cold, and it's up high enough that I probably need to do it with the coat off, tie it on I mean. So in the meantime it just kind of rolls around itself and is fairly inconspicuous given the color. So yeah, I'm going to sew that little loop on for the collar. Then I gotta figure out the pocket situation, which is going to get a little tricky. Just what order I have to sew things down to not accidentally sew the pockets completely shut. So it's a little after 10:30 at night on a Friday night. That's what I do for fun. Alright, pocket time. So for the hip pockets I'm going to do kind of a welted pocket. From the best I understand it, I'm probably not doing it exactly the way you would, because I think you'd attach the fabric here and that would become the pocket, whereas I'm just attaching a piece of fabric that will become a nice looking flap and protect these edges from tearing when your hand goes in and out. And the pocket itself is just going to be a solid piece of wool that goes the entire width of this panel and all the way down. So I don't know if that's technically still considered welting, or there might be another term for it. But either way, this is what I'm doing. And there's the finished pocket flap. I gotta say, when I first looked up how to do this, welting, I think that's what it's called, it looked pretty simple, and yet at the same time was pretty intimidating to attempt. But once I got going, it wasn't too bad. Not too bad for my first time doing something a little fancier, pocket-wise. On to the next one. And pocket number 2. One thing I forgot to mention I needed to include, but was in the plan all along, is a draft flap for the closure area, just to, you know, because it's not a zipper, so there might be some air flow there that I don't want, so I'm gonna have a nice little draft flap. What we've got here is pocket liners. So what I have decided to do is to use a full strip of wool going down the inside panel that I will then just stitch at strategic locations to create the pockets, obviously leaving the opening so you can access the pockets, because otherwise what's the point? And that way I'll get a second layer of wool on the front for a little bit of added warmth. And I suspect this is going to be quite a pain to stitch together, because there's a lot of layers of wool here. It's a lot of little things to work around. I gotta work around the ties and the closures and stuff, but I couldn't put those on after, because then I would end up stitching them straight through the pocket and closing the pocket off. So it's going to be challenging, I'm sure. Okay, wow, I stand corrected. I just made it around this entire panel without much problem. I got a little hung up on these areas with the closures, because that's just extra fabric. There's paracord in there, but I was able to bypass those, and otherwise I made it all the way around pretty quickly, pretty nicely. I'm pretty happy about that. Still have one more side to do though, so maybe I shouldn't have said anything yet. Final stretch here, pinning the hood on. Gotta figure out where the there's gonna be a little sleeve for a belt with a little bit of a drop down, so you can store a little like a small webbing belt in there or something. I have no idea how I'm gonna sew through all these layers of wool. I might have to do it by hand. Alright, here we go. Got it under the needle. Not easy getting it there. This whole coat weighs like 100 pounds. It's crazy. So yeah, at this point this is only 2 layers of wool, which is why I'm starting here. The front side's going to be a lot more difficult. I may have to take the foot off, see if I can do that, or I may have to do it by hand, which won't be fun. But we're almost done. Right, I'm about to do the last row of stitching. This has gone much more smoothly than I anticipated, which I like. So my method for getting the coat in here was I removed the foot so that I could slide all the layers in, and then I'll just put the foot back on, and I'm leaving the tension knob a little looser, and that has worked pretty well. So I'm going to get this last row of stitching in, and then maybe do a little video of the finished product and all its features. Stay tuned.